My name's Kirby, and I'm here with Joey, John, and Mark, and this is Off the Threads. Let's talk some baseball. So first off, getting into the 2026 Reds, there's a lot of things that are up in the air. Can our rotation stay healthy? Is the bullpen upgrades what we needed? And lastly, and probably most important, is the offensive power to be there in the 2026 season. We'll see throughout this spring training what happens, but let's get into talking a little bit more about our Reds.
Yeah, I can start us off. Specifically when speaking about the Central, certainly what we've done in the offseason is enough. When you think about our rotation, I think we're top five even before you bring in the depth pieces. Williamson's going to be back this year. Rhett Lauder's going to be back this year. He might even start over Burns to start out the year. Brandon Suarez, a guy who hit 49 home runs last year, even if you reduce that to 30 home runs at Great American Ballpark, you saw the record and the discrepancy of what we did when we hit a home run in a game versus when we didn't, when we scored more than 4 runs. I definitely think those moves, bolstering our bullpen, all of that combined makes us a legitimate threat for the NL Central.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pitching staff has been there and coming in at least to spring training healthier than they have been in the past. It provides definitely a lot more depth. And then also now you have Chase Burns, is maybe not MLB superstar ready, but he's ready to contribute good enough now. And then, Williamson coming back, Lauder coming back. You can trust Abbott more. Hunter Green is now like an ace. That was kind of still a question mark. You knew he had potential a year ago, but now there's no doubt that he can carry your rotation. And then I think adding Suarez is a huge move. And then getting mostly a full year out of Sal Stewart, just that way your ballpark can, turn into your friend, because they almost had the opposite of a home field disadvantage in years past, because we didn't have any power. We had good pitching, but all it took was one homer, and that could ruin everything.
I think for me, it's a lot about who do you miss from this team last year that's gone. And I think you look at the list. I know John, Espinal's not there anymore, which is, hurtful. But there's no one really, when you look at the list of exiting players, that you really miss, right? You look at who's coming in, as well as the continuity of, Terry for year 2, that, experience of the young core that the front office has been selling us on as a fan base. Like Joey said, Sal, you get another year of Marte, hopefully, succeeding from a right field standpoint. There's a lot of players that are growing into their stride, which I think is important. I think another thing too is Terry, right? What did he learn after 1 year of being the Reds manager? You can kind of take a look at some of the stuff that we didn't do well last year, whether it was extra inning games, one run games. There's a lot of things that this team can improve on, but in terms of what they did, I don't think you could say that they got worse, which is, a huge win. The Central's very winnable year in, year out. It's hard to not be excited about Reds baseball, especially with, a young team, especially with a top 10 rotation as well.
Yeah, kind of getting into what the Reds were able to do in the offseason to improve. Let's kind of do a little breakdown of who's out and who's in for the 2026 seasons. So breaking down who left. So we have Brent Suter, left-handed pitcher, Scott Barlow, right-handed pitcher, Austin Hayes, who was our outfield DH last year, Zach Lytle, who we picked up right before trade deadline, starting pitcher, Zualeta, who was a bullpen right-handed pitcher, Santiago Espinal was an infielder. Love Espinal probably as a person, as a baseball player. We got some questions. Nick Martinez, who's going to be a really, really big hole to fill for this offseason, who is a starting pitcher and a bullpen pitcher. And then Wade Miley, I put on there because I love Wade Miley. He didn't really pitch for us. He was like a coach sitting there. So kind of looking at who's out, I think a lot of us could agree on, losing Nick Martinez is a huge blow to the 2026 Cincinnati Reds. And it can kind of get into more conversation of who's going to fill that role. But let's talk about who's in really quick. So people we added over the offseason, we have Pierce Johnson, right-handed pitcher, bullpen, has playoff experience, is a leader in the bullpen. I think going to be really big for us. Just recently, as of yesterday, Nathaniel Lowe. I love your guys' opinions on this one because I thought that was pretty interesting. We have Suarez. Gino's back, baby. He'll be playing DH, hopefully. Brock Burke, left-handed pitcher, and Caleb Ferguson, left-handed pitcher. Love to see those guys out on the mound. And then lastly, outfield depth, which was a very interesting pickup, was J.J. Bleday and Dane Meyer. So first off, I kind of want to open it up to you guys. What do you guys think about the Nathaniel Lowe pickup?
Nathaniel Lowe to me was a good pickup because when Nathaniel Lowe was picked up, there's also the Castellanos debate going on. Do you bring back Castellanos? Do you bring in something like that? We have little to no risk on Nathaniel Lowe's contract. He's coming in minor league kind of contract. If he earns a spot through spring training, fantastic. Like you said, has World Series experience, has playoff experience. If he surprises us, does well in spring training, giving him a spot on the 40-man wouldn't be the worst idea, especially down the stretch if we do think we're playoff caliber, having a guy like that. Bring in, like you said, outfield depth. Outfield depth, I felt like at times last year was something that we struggled with. J.J. Bleday, I think he played 98 games or around 100 games last year. Wasn't someone who's going to pop off the charts for you statistic-wise, but just in general, ate up games, gave you some sort of durability and some sort of backing to lean on. Losing Nick Martinez, that's going to be tough. That's a guy who was an inning eater, but also did really well in his role, fluctuating in and out of that starting five when we needed him. I don't see like Chase Burns certainly is going to fill that void. He's going to be beyond that. But he reminds me of a guy like Chase Burns could be someone that we just heard could start in the bullpen, right? Rhett Lurd being our 5, he starts in the bullpen after he eats in some innings, get a fresh arm back in the lineup. Always tough to replace a guy like Nick Martinez as a utility guy, but overall what the guys we're bringing in for bullpen depth, can't complain with who we've got coming in versus who we got going out.
Yeah, if I'm being honest on Nick Martinez too, you look at that contract, I don't blame the Reds for not bringing him back at all. I mean, last year we were paying him $21 million to be, a spot starter and come out of the bullpen, long inning reliever. I mean, yeah, we're gonna miss his services, but not for that cost.
Yeah.
1,000%. I think when you have a couple arms addition by, getting them back from injury with Williamson and Rhett Lauder and another year of Chase Burns, you kind of just lean into the young arms that are coming up. And to Joey's point, for that money in a small market, you can use that and apply it a few other places. In terms of who's in, you look at it, all of the deals aren't really long term. It doesn't put us in a position where we're risking the future in terms of what the Reds they don't like to do, like the Cincinnati Bengals as well. They don't like to put in future years worth of risk. The deal with Suarez is pretty low risk. It's 1 year essentially. Everyone else, if it doesn't pan out, you can live with the results.
Put the contract offer in for Ellie, but then they'll leak it.
Come on, front office. Come on. All right. So kind of going off that, I thought you brought up a good point, like Gino and just like what he brings to the table. Like when we look at what Suarez was able to do in 2025, obviously we're not expecting exact results in 2026, but looking just at his stats as like a player spotlight here, 49 home runs last year, 118 RBIs. He was slugging 526. All of that, that's what the Reds were missing. I'd love your guys' opinion on what Gino brings, but also what do you think Gino needs to do for us to take the Central or be a playoff team?
I think he just needs to be a feared hitter in the lineup. I think that's what this team has been missing. Somebody who other teams feel like they may need to try and pitch around, or, they can't pitch around the guy in front of them. I think we should be expecting around 30 home runs as that's what we're kind of paying for. Anything above, I think he's definitely capable of producing, but it would be a major win, and we got the ballpark for him. So, just bring us some dingers.
When you look at the contract also, bring on Suarez 1 year, $15 million. It's less than the Candelario contract. It's less than the Moustakas contract. It's well worth a flyer on, not to mention familiar with the team, familiar with some of the players. Like there's going to be some of that veteran leadership that if you look at beyond 2023, 2024, we were missing that. 2025, we were kind of missing that. You bring a guy like that in, the Reds are already releasing clips of him coming in and seeing how much he's bolstering just everybody's mental and everybody's ability to kind of gather around the team. I think Suarez was huge to bring in. If you're even looking at the other people that we're trying to bring in for a big bat, we were looking at Schwarber. Schwarber would have been awesome as well. Great veteran presence. But we were also going to be having to be on the hook for a long term. Mark, you brought up a good point. The Reds and the Bengals, we don't typically do that long term. It's typically like a quick hit or a 1-year contract. I think this was a perfect person to fill that void of what the Reds needed.
Yeah, I think game to game, there'll be some times where we'll get a little frustrated because what Suarez also does bring is strikeouts, and obviously Ellie brings a lot of strikeouts as well. So, we'll have that every 2 weeks where we're just sitting there watching the Ks pile up for the other team pitcher. Like, I think over 162, the threat that he brings to your lineup is gonna pay off a lot.
I think for me, the part that you get with Suarez is you get a lot of goodwill back with the fan base. Talk about just a fan favorite in terms of who he is on and off the field. I remember Suarez was one of my favorite players in that stretch. You just get a positive energy in the locker room, which I think is very, a positive going into the season. The one thing that I am a little hesitant on, kind of to Joey's point, is the strikeouts. Also, there are a lot of peaks and valleys with Suarez as a hitter. I know with the trade to Seattle, he wasn't necessarily, a big contributor in terms of average, but he's never been an average hitter. He was less than 200 batting, 13 home runs. It looks like you make that trade at the deadline to kind of catapult you, and he didn't necessarily do that for the Mariners. I know for the Reds this year, he is essentially your cleanup guy. He's your guy that you need to hit 30 home runs, bat in over 100 ribbies. So I hope it's the historical average of Suarez, but to Joey's point, there will be stretches where we're looking at Ellie, Suarez. If Sal's in a funk, there's going to be a lot of that middle of the lineup not producing, and that's where it gets scary because that back end of the lineup isn't there to scare you either. So hopefully he can pull it off.
Yeah, I think the ballpark also can play a role with Suarez too. Seattle, he just never really seemed to hit in that ballpark. And it was like that's when his numbers fell off a cliff last year too. He had 36 homers before getting traded there when he was playing in Arizona. So I don't know. I'm optimistic that he's going to bring a lot. He hit that grand slam. He didn't give the Mariners nothing. He hit that grand slam and
yeah.
True. So kind of going off that, I think like a big thing that the Reds need to think about, who's going to bat 1 and 2, who is going to set the table for Ellie and Gino. The other thing to think about is teams can't pitch around Ellie anymore because you have 40 home runs behind him, right? So it'll be interesting to see what Ellie's on-base percentage is going to be like. It's interesting to see how many stolen bases he has with a healthy leg. The last thing, too, to think about is just one player signed doubles the amount of home runs by any other player the previous season. I think Ellie's around, don't correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was like 24. Steer was at 24 or something like that. Gino had 49 home runs last year, so kind of think about how much that brings to the table. I think is huge. Now, kind of transitioning into the pitching side of the team, I want to highlight our first episode as a podcast, Hunter Green, because Hunter Green is the closest thing we have to not only a Cy Young winner, a player that can absolutely change a franchise. Looking at his stats last year, I think is looking at his whole history. He only played 19 games. He had 19 starts. Look at that. That's what it is right there. But he only had 19 starts. Imagine if a 2.76 ERA with a under 1 whip played 30, right? Had 30 starts. What are your guys' thoughts on what Hunter Green can do this year? Not only do this year, what could he do for the rest of the rotation throughout this year?
He's that dude. He's the reason that we think this franchise can compete for the next few years. We got him on an extremely underpaid contract. Now the world knows it. It's not just us as Reds fans, He's going from used to be a steal for me in fantasy drafts in like the 10th round to like you got to spend one of your first 3 picks if you want HG.
I think Hunter Green continues to build off like the seasons that he's had, right? A lot of the things that have been his issues in past seasons have been not necessarily the peaks and valleys, because even with that, he was dominant, but the injuries. If he can stay off the injuries, if he can stay consistent, I also think a little bit of taking things off his shoulders, as he is that dude, he doesn't have to continuously be that dude. We've got so many people behind him that can fill in that role. Chase Burns, Andrew Abbott, Brady Singer, Nick Lodolo, Rhett Lauder, Brendan Williamson. Like, those are 6 legitimate MLB arms that are behind you that you can feel comfortable with. Not to mention, like, you look at late March, you look at early April, if you can start hot with our pitching staff, with a projected starting 5 of TJ Friedel, Noble Marte, Ellie, Suarez, and DeSal Stewart, no team's going to want to come into GABP, see that 5 starting out with Hunter Green on the mound.
I think for me, Hunter Green, like most people in the fan base, is just the potential, right? When we were going up against the Dodgers, I think me personally and a lot of you guys were saying, well, if Hunter Green has that top tier game, we could sneak out a win against the Dodgers. And obviously it didn't work out that way. But just overall, the what if, the potential raw skill of Hunter Green is just, I mean, it's comparable with Skeens and some of the other top elite pitchers in the game. And then just also too, the ability to kind of mentor. I mean, him and Chase Burns are very similar, high draft picks, flamethrowers, just hopefully, producing on the field as well as just serving as kind of a new leader within that pitching rotation with Martinez gone, and a lot of these young and upcoming pitchers, starting to make their mark in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think pitching coaching has also played a great role on Hunter Green. That and development, like you look at his strikeouts per 9, that actually was kind of a drop off from 2023 to 2024 and 5, but his walks per 9 are way down. His whip is down under 1. He hit a league high 19 batters a couple years ago, and he's only hit 2 last year. So, he's just not issuing free passes anymore. Pitching, he still obviously can strike out tons of guys, but he's pitching a little bit more to contact. I still definitely wouldn't consider him to contact pitcher, but he's not wasting time trying to miss bats and putting guys on that way.
I think this is like a good point when you think of what Hunter Green is. Hunter Green is a player that will set the table for the rest of your rotation, meaning when you go and face him, it's going to be a 2-1 ball game. He might, have one of those outings where he only, pitched 5 innings, but it's shut out 5 innings. And I think we've gotten used to that with Hunter Green. Let's get into kind of what the rotation is going to be like. And this is our what the Threads reaction segment of our podcast is all about. It's our personal opinions. It's what we think. Stats thrown out the window. Let's just get into being an emotional Reds fan here. So to start things out, we have done a couple preseason projections of what we think the starting rotation is going to be like and our record for the Reds. So we'll start off with the starting rotation. What we did was kind of guess what the starting 5 would be like right at the end of spring training. Now, obviously, injuries regard, you never know what's going to happen. But let's get into kind of what our thoughts are. I'll start off by saying Hunter Green's obviously our ace, and that's unanimous across the board. After that, it actually gets a little dicey of what our 2 through 5 is. So mine was Nick Lodolo is going to be our 2. Andrew Abbott's our 3. Brady Singer our 4. And I actually have Rhett Lauder as our 5. We'll get more into this after we're done going over everybody's projections, because I know it's a hot topic. But I guess we'll start off. Mark, we'll go over to you. What was your projections for the starting rotation?
I think, like everyone, Hunter Green 1. I think Abbott is the 2. I think from a consistency standpoint, he's been there all-star last year. I do think the stuff from Lodolo is superior, but in terms of what you get in start after start, it's hard not to put Abbott at 2. And then just following through that 3-4 Lodolo Singer, and then similar to you, Kerb, Blauder. I think the Reds are going to keep the training wheels on Chase Burns just a little bit longer. I think with this starting rotation, there's obviously the possibility of Burns, getting starts later on in the year. But for right now, I kind of think that Lauder's going to take that 5.
Yeah, I can step into my five here. As we said, Hunter Green across the board. That's number one. Something that I find funny, we all have Nick Lodolo to Abbott going back-to-back lefties and then back-to-back righties at the bottom. Uh, but looking at it, Lodolo or Abbott, you can flip those with a coin to me. Both are going to give you strong innings. Both are great lefties. Abbott sometimes towards the end of the year we've seen can wear down a little bit. That's where kind of your depth piece comes in. But having Lodolo there, finish with Abbott in the third, Singer, you got him in the fourth, and then bringing up Chase Burns. I just think there's been some chatter about Louder coming in, and I do think that Louder will have his time to shine. Like I said, we're going to have depth as someone in our starting five is going to go down with an injury. But I think Chase Burns, we're going to start him in the five, and then Louder and Williamson work in as injuries come up out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the rotation. Once you get a couple off days thrown in there, you can mix around the actual order of when guys are throwing. But in terms of who we're gonna think of as our one or two or three, and when you hit the trade deadline, when you assess what you have on your roster and what you need, Hunter Green is obviously your number one. He's your eight. I think Lodolo's got the most upside as a number two, but obviously he's had the most injury history. So you can't count on 180 innings out of him. But I think he's got the next filthiest stuff out of the rotation. And then Abbott, would love to have a year like we had out of him last year. Just pretty much quality start after quality start. Brady Singer was, I think he can kind of be that unsung hero of the team where he just delivers consistency every single game, gives you an opportunity to win. He's not going to pitch you those 8-inning shutouts, but if you can get 6 innings, 2 or 3 earned, and then now you got some power in that lineup, you still got opportunities to win games with him. And then I'm going all upside with Chase Burns as my number 5. I want to see him in there. I want to see 2 guys throwing over 100 every fastball. Just be a feared rotation.
We want free pizza at Great American Ballpark.
Yes.
Let's get to 11. So kind of going off that, I would like to bring up, the Chase Burns and Rhett Lauder kind of discussion on what the organization's going to do throughout the season with them. I have a feeling, and the reason why I have Rhett Lauder as the 5th starter is because I think the Reds are going to limit the innings of Rhett Lauder, Chase Burns, and Brandon Williams. The whole idea for this is 2 of them are coming off injury. One of them has never thrown 200 innings in their life for a season. And I think it might be a way of them to have a fully ready bullpen when they make the playoffs. So I could see Rhett Lauder starting from now until May, and then he gets put into the bullpen. And I could see Chase Burns starting June to August, and maybe Williamson gets called up if there's an injury. Hopefully there's not. That he kind of takes over. That was my whole idea. Now, I will say I agree with you, Joey. I think it's going to be way more electric, and fans are going to enjoy it 10 times more if Chase Burns was there. Because being at a homestand where Chase Burns starts and then 100 start right after, why wouldn't you go to the ballpark?
I mean, dude, don't get groceries that week.
Yeah, don't get groceries. But on a real note, though, like I don't see a starting rotation this not only deep but this effective in the NL Central. Not only, even in the MLB, there are a couple teams. Obviously, the Dodgers can say that. One more thing to kind of talk about starting rotation. I'm curious what you guys think. If there is an injury, what might you see from not only depth level from our organization, meaning who's get called up, who's the next person in line, but what could you see the Reds doing long term with that individual? I know they've done Hunter Green where they extend him too long, meaning his injury, they'll put him on the 60-day even though he might be ready to go after a month. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
I think they'll definitely take the more conservative approach, and they'll be frustrating as a fan. Kind of an idea that they won't do. Would you consider doing a 6-man rotation, given the blister injuries with Lodolo, the injury history with Hunter Green, wanting to keep Lauder, Burns, fresh and keep them, within a certain innings? Is it crazy to say that you would explore that option? They won't, but is it crazy?
I don't think it's crazy by any means. If you look at Terry Francona's like past in the history, he's been known to kind of reach in to a six-man rotation in times of injury. He did it when he was at the Guardians, done it before in his career. In general, I think this would be the team you would look at something like that, right? Like you have that depth. Kirby, you brought up a great point. If you do have an injury, what kind of route do you take? With the depth you have, I can't help but think you take the conservative route. Give them extra time. Might not be what the fans want, but if you have the depth, use it correctly and make sure that person's coming back 100%. That way you don't have a repeat injury later down the line when you need them. But yeah, six-person rotation would be fun. Could give you a little bit interesting. I don't see them entertaining that idea unless they have to. Like you said, Kirby, you don't want an injury, but if that does arise, I could see that being something we bring into play. Just not in a standard circumstance.
What do we think about Chase Petty? Where do we think he's going to start the year? In AAA or out of the bullpen? We haven't mentioned his name at all actually today.
So I'm thinking Chase Petty starts in AAA. I really have the feeling that Chase Petty is going to come up. It might not be until August, but I think he is going to be a weapon out of the bullpen. I think they're going to use him, especially if we make the playoffs, as a bridge guy. Might be, an inning or two or something to kind of fill that void. But I think this year, strictly AAA starter, maybe a bullpen guy as they kind of go through the season.
Yeah, I mean, he clearly just wasn't really ready yet last year. But, hopefully he's getting the work in right now. I see him on Instagram all the time.
Also, he kind of reminds me of like Connor Phillips, but with stuff. Like the way they used Connor Phillips last year, I feel like they're going to use Chase Petty the same way this year. So I'm kind of going into that. All right, real quick, before we kind of go through the rest of our threads of reaction, we talked about how our rotation is going to look, especially compared to the NL Central. Let's get into what we think the record of the Cincinnati Reds is going to be this year. With all the hype that we've done this offseason, people are grading this offseason's pickups as one of the best in the past 20 years for the Reds. So what do you guys think? Start with Joey for your predicted record.
Yeah, I got 87 wins, 87, 75. I think this is a much better ball club than it was a year ago. But I do think the NL is, pretty tough. There's only two teams that I, as of today, look at the schedule and think, that should be a series win. That's the Rockies and the Cardinals. Otherwise, maybe the Nationals can be thrown in there too. I honestly don't know a whole lot about them this year. But, the Marlins are a better team. The Braves are not going to be what they were last year. The whole NL West and then, Cubs, Brewers, Pirates, those are not, the Cubs and Brewers have never been a free win. The Pirates are not a free win anymore either. Depends who you catch in the rotation. Hopefully we're always missing Skeens and, missing Bubba Chandler and Jerry Jones as well, but they got a scary rotation as well. I think we're going to win a lot of low-scoring games where, 3-2, 4-2 wins. But I like Pagan a lot at the end of the bullpen as well.
Yeah. Building off that, I have them at 89 and 73. They ended last year 83 and 79. I see the moves that they made. Plus, like you said, Joey, re-signing Emilio Pagan, I think he was huge for us last year. He 8 innings, Santillan 8 innings. 89 73 for the moves that they made. I think we improved 6 games. Like I said, I personally think that 89-73 is kind of conservative. This team with this pitching has like that 90-win juice, 92-win juice, can win the NL Central. I have them now second in the NL Central behind the Cubs personally. But anybody's ball game, right? Mark, you brought up earlier, last year our record when we were losing games 1-0 was unlike anything we've ever seen in the MLB. There's no way that consists in 2026. So some things bounce our way. I see us improving 6 games, second in the NL Central.
I have a little lower on the projection, kind of a little bit more than their over-under from Vegas. 85 wins, 77 losses, third. I think the Cubs are still going to be the front runner. Milwaukee is just the kryptonite going into Milwaukee. It seems like every year for the last few years has just been series loss after series loss. I think they'll have a lot of hot stretches where they'll win 5 games, they'll lose 5 games, they'll be a frustrating team because they have all this potential. I was just looking at Vegas's over under on wins just from an NL standpoint. Obviously, they have us third. Cubs are taking it. It looks like 88.5 wins. And then Pittsburgh, surprisingly, is a little bit higher with about 77 wins. And then Milwaukee, right around the Reds, 84.5 wins. So it's kind of a coin flip in terms of second and third between us and the Brew Crew. Some other teams in the NL that kind of stuck out. We're going to be fighting for that wild card if we can't take the division. Obviously, you have the Phillies, you have the Mets and the Braves in that NL East, which is going to be scary. The NL West is also just as scary with the Padres and the Dodgers, and the Giants are kind of in a similar position as the Reds in that middle tier. Hopefully we do kind of win a few more of those one run games. Looking at their stats for extra innings, they were horrible, right? They're 3-12. Just talk about opportunity. If you are in a close game, what can you do where the ball falls your way, or you get a call that you didn't get last year, to kind of get that momentum swinging for the Reds. But overall, I think they're similar to last year, a little bit better, but third in division is kind of where I have them.
So I'm going to be taking another turn here. Listeners, you'll come to find out very quickly. I'm super optimistic when it comes to the Reds, and it makes me very sad most of the years. But I'm going that the Reds are going to win the NL Central. I'm going 94-68 record. One of the best records they've had in, who knows, 40 years maybe. The reason why I am very confident in us winning the Central, obviously I hope my record hits, but winning the Central is for two reasons. One reason, we underperformed last year. Offensively, our team 1 through 9, besides maybe Terry Friedel, underperformed. Meaning we have the bats this year to do something. Our starting pitching last year was so good that we got to the playoffs underperforming offensively. So if our team just maybe scratches the surface and is average, they're doing what they're supposed to offensively, our pitching is so good that I think we're going to be able to win the Central and get through what we're trying to do. Pirates, I do believe that there's a lot of hype with them. I don't think they're going to be able to stretch it out throughout the season. Brewers, I think their witchcraft's out the window now. I think the Brewers are going to be a real mid-market team like we all know and hope that they should be. The Cubs, I will say, the Cubs are a playoff team. We all know that. We know that they're going to be doing something. But I do believe that the Reds this year, maybe a little bit of luck's in there, but I think they're going to be pulling it off and winning the Central. Sorry, Cardinals fans, I didn't give you a shout out there throughout the whole thing. We all know what you guys are going through, so I won't even talk about you guys right now. So going off this and kind of looking at what our records were, now what I want to do is kind of segue into our last segment that we do, which is straight from the thread. So again, the whole idea is we've been in a group message now for years, and we talk about Reds baseball probably every day, every other day. We're going to get into kind of the personalities of our group message. So we have, all of us are Cincinnati born and raised. We've loved the Reds, but I think we all love them in different ways. And this segment's going to show that. So we're going to start off with the West Side rants from John, our native West Sider of Cincinnati. Go Elder, I guess. And Purple Fridays forever.
Correct. Altiora striving for the higher things. My West Side rant, the reason it's called this is I tend to in the group chat send maybe 10 unanswered. Nobody's texted back. I'm still firing off, upset about something, messages in a row. My rant right now, 39 days till opening day, in the theme of what we've been talking about, I'm a buyer at plus 390 for the Reds to win the NL Central. Absolute buyer. When you look at 2025 specifically, to me, and we reached the playoffs. Like I said, 83-79, a lot of that offensive woes, but the pitching was phenomenal. We had so much regression offensively from players that I think you're going to see step into different atmospheres. McLean, right? You're looking at Matt McLean, 2023 versus 2025 stats. He played significantly less time in 2023, had more RBIs, more home runs, about 0.7 better when you're talking about batting average. Like, he's going to improve. He's going to bounce back from injury. Spencer Steer, he's going to show a little bit of his 2023 self. Sal Stewart, this is first full year in the MLB. This is his year to catch a stride, especially when you have players like Suarez hitting in front of you, Ellie hitting in front of you. You can really show off some of that power when you're going to have people on base who have to pitch to you. Marte, full off season of reps in the outfield. I don't think everybody understands how important that is. Offensively, when you have to also battle learning a new position, you can't take all the reps that you can in the cage when you're trying to learn, hey, how do I play in the outfield? Never done this before. He's had off-season reps to do that. Suarez swinging a big power bat, bring in bullpen, relief pitchers, re-signing beyond, and then leaning on, like we said, that starting five with the depth that we have. I think the NL Central is a little bit more open this year with the Cubs being at the top, Brewers supposed to be at the top. I think us sitting there at plus 390 gives us plenty of value that I'm going to be hammered.
All right, now going off our West Side rants, big shout out, plug in there for Elder and LaSalle too. We hear you over there, LaSalle listeners. We're going into Mark metrics. The whole idea here is we all know Mark's 10 times smarter than all of us, and he's got the answers. This segment is not sponsored by DraftKings, but maybe one day might be sponsored by DraftKings. So go ahead, Mark, hit us off with some of this. What you got?
Thanks, Kirby. And the idea of this kind of segment is to find one or two, open the board for discussion on some sort of long-term future, or in the season we'll look at Nerfies and a few other fun little home run parlays. But the one that I want to kind of just start off is Sal Stewart. I know John just talked a bit about him. Plus 950 to win NL Rookie of the Year. Fourth best odds according to DraftKings. The crown is yours. One day it should be ours in terms of a future sponsor. I think it's hard to not, obviously we're biased, we're Reds fans. He's lost a lot of weight. He played, arguably he was our best player against the Dodgers in that playoff series. I think if he has the opportunity and the Reds find themselves in that, running for the division race that John thinks that we're going to do, it's hard not to think that Sal Stewart starting, having multiple positions, he's obviously, he can play first, he can play third, you can put him at DH. There's a plenty of opportunities for him to be making, an impact on this team. Open it up for you guys. I don't know what you think. I think there's crazier things that have happened. So that's all I have to say. Want to see what you guys think of in that one.
I think that's another position I'm a buyer. Sal Stewart, if you go back and you watch the damage that he was doing in AAA, and he came up and everybody's like, well, that's a pretty big step. He filled that role within weeks and started to play really good baseball. Like you said, in the Dodgers series, I think he might have been our star player. Giving him a full season, looks like he was dialed. He's lost the LBs. I've gained the LBs. He's going to be swinging that big stick. At plus 950, who's not going to take a flyer on Sal Stewart?
Just quick plug for all of the students that Kirby teaches. Go home this week. Tell your parents. DraftKings account, $200 straight to Sal Stewart.
Hey, hold up, Kirby. Let us send the link first, though. We want to get to.
We want the refer the friends.
Hey, that's free money, guys. It's free money. Just do it. Just do it. Mark, thanks for Mark's metrics. Not sponsored, but soon to be sponsored by DraftKings. Now, getting into our last segment here from Straight from the Thread is Joey's segment. Joey might be one of those diehard Cincinnati fans I've ever met, but he doesn't just bleed red. He also bleeds a little bit of the Red Sox out of him as well. His AL team is the Boston Red Sox and has been for a long time. So this segment is around the league with Joey because Joey actually keeps up with other teams besides the Cincinnati Reds, which a lot of us don't do. So Joey, go ahead and this off. This is not sponsored, but soon to be sponsored by Toyota Camry.
Yeah. So I'll keep it brief because it's all off season. Just acquisitions and stuff. The team that improved the most this offseason was probably the team that needed it the least. The Dodgers got Kyle Tucker and Alexis Diaz. So that's there. I'm also looking at the teams with the, most improved WAR. The Rockies, +5 WAR. So pencil the Rockies in for 48 wins next year. It's going to be a great time at Coors Field over there. um, yeah, I mean, the Dodgers are the team to beat if we're looking at the league. I think there are a lot of other teams that have, that second tier could be 10 teams deep. And I think a lot of, national media probably wouldn't be putting the Reds there, but I think they could be part of those next top 10 teams, top 11 in the league. For the Red Sox, I would just say for Mark's metrics, that first opening series, under 10 runs total, maybe, for that entire thing. The pitching matchups are going to be unbelievable for that series because they're both pitch first teams. Tito reunion as well for opening day. It's going to be great. You mentioned the Cubs got better. I don't think they got a whole lot better, though, because they lost Tucker. Big signing of Bregman. I think Bregman's a better clubhouse presence than Tucker, but I do think production from a bat, I think they're losing out a little bit there. The Pirates had some additions. A lot of them are kind of, a lot of B plus players that they added. But their lineup was disgusting in a bad way last year. And they're now going to have, about a league average lineup with good pitching. I'm a big believer in the Brewers are falling off hard. I think Vegas, is showing that as well. 97 wins last year. I think they're going to fall off at least 12, 13 wins from that number. It's just, if you look at ins and outs, they definitely had bigger outs than they brought in. And, they got guys like Quinn Priester, throwing a 6 WAR last year. Maybe he is going to do that again, but I don't know. I'm not penciling that in. I think they're going to miss Peralta. They're going to miss a lot of these guys that they went away with. It's an exciting time for the league. Hopefully we have a season in 2027 as well, but I'm really pumped for this 2026 season. Also looking forward to the World Baseball Classic a little bit. I'm sure we'll touch on that more in a future podcast when that's closer around the corner. But yeah, I can't wait for Tuesday night to be just absolutely ruined on random weeks by a Scott Barlow or something. I miss being a baseball fanatic. Cannot wait for the end of March.
So, kind of going off that, Joey, I think you hit something really important to I guess, Reds Nation in general. National media for the Cincinnati Reds. I feel like over the past, 10 years since you guys have dropped off since, 2012, 2014 seasons, the national media, just in general, has kind of looked at the Reds in a different way, maybe not paid enough attention to them, or maybe not understanding fully of what this team's built around. If you guys ever get a chance, you should look at the MLB Power Rankings for ESPN that came out just recently talking about the Reds. I feel like the national media doesn't understand who our team is, and it's important for us as Reds fans kind of establish and understand that maybe, the national media is trying to just get headlines and clicks when it comes to understanding what our team's all about. But yeah, very interesting, and I know this was on kind of our radar going into the season, but it's something to kind of think about kind of as the year goes on.
I'm just glad you brought up the ESPN article. That was a slap in the face to any sort of baseball fan and any sort of credibility that ESPN has to say that this starting rotation that, to my knowledge, and to I think anybody else's knowledge who's watching standard baseball, last year was phenomenal. And we're adding depth pieces to it. And to say that it could crack into the bottom 5 of starting rotations, either you didn't do your due diligence or you're just a hater. Like, I don't see any way in which you can say this is a bottom 5 rotation, a bottom half of the league rotation. I think anybody who's saying this is a rotation that doesn't deserve to be in the top 10 at minimum is not in the right headspace.
Yeah, where do you think you'd rank our rotation right now? I'd probably put us like right around 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that.
5, I nail meet hammer. I was gonna say anywhere in that, honestly, 4 to 7 range. There are a couple that are above us. They're like, I don't necessarily think they're touching Dodgers rotation, right? There's a couple rotations I think that are just slightly better than ours, especially if you're bringing in that bullpen piece. But if you're just talking strictly rotation, I've got us right in that 4 to 7 range personally. Anytime you're speaking about a rotation that has Hunter Green in it, Lodolo in it, Chase Burns, Rhett Lauder up and coming, like, I don't see how you don't see the potential.
Yeah, I mean, going off like what you guys said, like, yeah, I think we have to be in the top five. If our, you know, rotation stays healthy, all things being said, the talent that we have, the depth we have, it's got to be up there. And I think again, not trying to, throw shade at ESPN. I understand they're covering the world of sports, making sure that, when you have someone writing about a specific team, make sure you got the information because from a intense Reds fan like we are, that might change their view on a lot. So just kind of making sure that we understand the teams that they're talking about. And easy for us to say because we only care about the Reds, and that's kind of what we talk about. But again, just thinking about that in the future. All right, last thing that we're going to kind of hit on, and Joey kind of hit on this a little bit, what the World Baseball Classic is this year. Very interesting news for the Red sickos out there. Edwin Arroyo is a shortstop prospect that has been highly regarded through the Reds organization. There's a good chance he might be the starting shortstop for Puerto Rico this year. Obviously, there's other players that should be probably the starting shortstop, but kind of your reaction to this and what this means, I guess, for Edwin Arroyo going into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a great experience for him. Obviously, Lindor and Correa are probably more deserving of that opportunity, but Lou Gehrig wouldn't have been able to be the guy without Wally Pipp being sick one day. So, maybe this is the opportunity that Arroyo gets, to get his name out there, get him a national stage, and then maybe the Reds, think that he could be a part of the 2026 team. I'll be watching when he's up to bat.
Yeah, I'm excited just to see it, right? Like in 2023 and in those early years as he was coming up the ranks before he really had that season-ending injury, I was excited, right? Edwin Arroyo was a name that was being tossed around very heavily as one of our top prospects. He still is one of our top prospects, but this is going to be some really good experience for him coming off a 2025 season that was good, not great, a little bit lackluster to I think what his standards typically are. But this will be a really good spotlight for us Reds fans who are going to be tuning in to actually watch and see what he can produce on the world stage against some of the world's best.
I think the only negative thing that I have is that there aren't a lot of Reds participating. So, get Arroyo, Suarez, I think, is the only other starter in terms of competing in the World Baseball Classic. So hopefully those two shine bright and give us a little bit more optimism going into the season. But it is pretty impressive that Arroyo is playing on the Puerto Rican team.
Just to circle back and that around the league segment, talking about where the Reds rotation stands. Fangraphs right now has it Red Sox, Tigers, Dodgers, Phillies, Reds at number 5. And that's got Hunter Green with a projected WAR of 3.8. I think you can pump that figure up. It's also got Abbott and Lodolo both sitting around 2.5. So, I think that people are going to start to learn about this rotation by mid-May.
I think that's a good kind of like wrap up what our episode's about and what our thoughts are about kind of going into this 2026 season. Like I think I obviously have strong feelings towards it. The Reds are going to show not only the NL Central, but I think the MLB how good this team has been constructed. Obviously, we have our critiques with Nick Krall and the way he's handled the organization. But from what we're trying to do, we've all had 2026 circled on our calendars for the past 5 years, and this is the year that's going to make some damage. I think the Joey, what you kind of brought up there, like having them quote unquote underperform as a rotation, still being number 5 in the MLB. I think it's something to think about. What are your guys' final thoughts kind of on the Reds going into season and kind of what to expect?
I'll take my final thoughts. I think you've hit nail on the head. I think we've circled around a lot of things. Something that I think is not spoken about a ton was last year we improved a ton on outs on the base paths. We led the league the previous 2 years in outs on the base paths. I think Terry's only going to learn this team better. Something we haven't talked about as well. Ellie was dealing with a quad injury the majority of last year. We couldn't have Ellie run like were accustomed to for the previous 2 years. Smarter base paths, better bats, To my knowledge, I think we've improved defensively as well. Key Brian Hayes again sit at third sometimes. Sal Stewart's been improving on defense. Only upside really that I'm seeing, and then the only downside I see is you lose that piece with Nick Martinez. But outside of that, you're replacing a lot of other things. I think you improve, and you're really going to vie for a spot in the NL Central this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say my final thought would be looking at these who's in. I think one of these names that we don't expect to have a big impact will. Maybe it's Caleb Ferguson becomes the setup guy for Pagan, or JJ Bleday becomes an Austin Hayes plus, and you actually get better at that position. I think we're probably sleeping on a lot of those guys, and we can't expect all of them to be major contributors, but I think one or two of them are really going to have an impact on this team.
I'm excited. I know Super Bowl just wrapped up. Baseball season's right around the corner. One thing that I'm excited about is a lot of the young talent that we had last year. Specifically, I think Marte arguably was one of our better players last year. Another year of understanding, his position at right field and just growing, hopefully in that second spot in the lineup. I'm very optimistic, especially with a lot of the additions that they're bringing in were players that were a part of the organization, whether it's health or just promotion. It's hard to not have a positive feeling with opening day just right around the corner specifically.
Yeah, and kind of wrap things up. I hope you guys all that feeling that we get, middle of February is, we got a month and a half until baseball season. Opening day's around the corner. Snow's melting in Cincinnati finally, and we're starting to get that baseball feel. So, again, just so everybody is aware, obviously we're Reds sickos through and through. But if you're the casual listener here, I hope you're able to pull some things out of this episode and get a glimpse of what the 2026 Cincinnati Reds can do here. So that's been Off the Thread, Reds. Thanks for joining us, and be on the lookout for our next episode that will be dropping later on in the week, which can be found on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to check us out on social media at OT Thread Reds. Let's go Reds.